The Young and the Restless, when the Newman family secret sparks a new storm. Victor, with his steadfast personality and ability to control every situation, could not hide his disappointment and anger when he discovered that the female members of the Newman family had taken matters into their own hands regarding Jordan without consulting him. During the family meeting at the Newman mansion, Victor's authoritative voice rang out, questioning each person present in the room. "Why did you act behind my back? If I had been involved from the beginning, everything would have been handled thoroughly, without any risks or consequences." Victoria Newman, with her characteristic cold demeanor, did not show any signs of being shaken by her father's rage. She stood up, looked Victor straight in the eye and replied, "Jordan is gone. That's enough, Dad. He is no longer a threat to us. We did what we needed to do, and I explained everything the police needed to know." Victoria believed that with Jordan gone, the Newman family's troubles would disappear as well. She was confident that the version of events that had been edited and sent to the police was perfect, leaving no loopholes that could lead to suspicion. However, she did not realize that this was just the beginning of greater complications. Unresolved links. Although Jordan had disappeared, the shadow of Ian Ward, Jordan's accomplice, remained a terrifying mystery. Ian, who always had his own agenda and never let others get the better of him, was still there, silently observing every development. Ian's lack of appearance or contact made Victor even more uneasy. While Victor was determined to turn every corner to find out where Ian was, Victoria thought it was more important to focus on what was in front of him. She brushes off her father's concerns, claiming that Ian is no longer involved with the Newman family. But is that true? Mariah panics. Tessa and Aria's mysterious disappearance. In another development, Mariah Copeland falls into a state of panic when she discovers that Tessa Porter, her partner, and baby Aria have disappeared without a trace. When she returns home after work, Mariah finds the house empty, and her repeated calls to Tessa's phone go unanswered. Uncertainty creeps into Mariah's every thought as she begins to imagine the worst-case scenarios. In a panic, Mariah quickly calls Nick Newman for help. Nick, who is always there to support the family, listens to Mariah's urgent explanation and tries to reassure her. "Mariah, calm down. Maybe Tessa just took Aria out for a while," Nick said, though he was starting to feel something was wrong. However, this disappearance was not as simple as Nick thought. Tessa was not the type to act without warning, especially when she was taking care of Aria. This made everyone start to wonder, was this disappearance related to Jordan and Ian's schemes? Tensions rose. At the same time, Victor decided that the family could no longer sit idly by. He called an emergency meeting with the entire Newman family, including Nick, Mariah, and Victoria. Victor emphasized that Ian Ward might be working behind the scenes and that the family needed to be prepared for anything. Victoria, while confident that the matter was resolved, could not deny that Ian was a dangerous man, always ready to strike back if he felt threatened. She begins to wonder if her decision to leave her father out of the original plan was a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, Mariah continues to try to contact Tessa, but all her efforts are in vain. She begins to recall small details of recent events, Tessa's tense phone conversations with strangers, the flicker of worry in her eyes when talking about the future. Is Tessa hiding something from Mariah? And is Aria being drawn into the potential dangers facing the entire Newman family? Victor's plan and Victoria's resistance. Unable to bear the weight any longer, Victor decides to take matters into his own hands. He begins to plan a search for Ian Ward, even though it may put the family in danger once again. However, Victoria strongly objects. "Dad, this is not the way to solve it. We need to focus on protecting our family, not hunting down those who have disappeared," Victoria snapped, the tension evident in her voice. But Victor only replied coldly, "It's because of our family that I can't sit still. If Ian comes back, he'll attack not only me, but my children and grandchildren. I won't let that happen." While Victor puts his plan into action, Nick and Mariah continue to investigate Tessa and Aria's disappearance. They reach out to Tessa's friends for clues, and gradually, unusual details begin to emerge. It seems that Tessa has received a threat from Ian Ward, and in order to protect Aria, she is forced to leave Genoa City. Can the Newman family face the new storm that Ian Ward brings? And will Mariah find Tessa and Arya safe? The family's internal turmoil and long-buried secrets are slowly pushing them to the brink of collapse. Victor Newman is not a man used to being left out of the game, especially when his family is facing serious problems. When he learns how Victoria and the Newman women handled Jordan without consulting him, Victor feels betrayed. During a family meeting, he did not hesitate to express his anger. "What were you thinking? Why did you act on your own without telling me?" Victor roared, his voice like thunder shaking the room. "If I had been involved, I could have solved everything neatly, without leaving any trouble. But now? You have opened a Pandora's box, and now you have to suffer the consequences." Victoria Newman, who inherited her father's cold and decisive demeanor, was not fazed. She kept her eyes cold, stood up straight, and replied, "Dad, it's all taken care of. Jordan is gone. That's all you need to know. We don't need to discuss it anymore." Victoria's confidence was based on the fact that she had skillfully manipulated the situation, presenting a perfectly edited version of events to the police. In her opinion, this was the best way to ensure that no one else was involved. But Victor's impatience and anger stemmed not from Jordan's disappearance, but from a larger problem. He didn't believe it was over, and his fears were justified. Ian Ward, the real danger, was still at large. Untethered Change Jordan might be gone, but Ian Ward was not. A cunning and dangerous man, Ian was never the type to back down easily. His absence only added to Victor's unease. He knew Ian was too cunning to be cowed. His silence was not a sign of safety, but a warning that something was afoot. Victoria, however, brushed aside her father's warnings. "Ian is no longer our problem," she said firmly. "We've cut him off, and he can't do anything about it now." Victor, though he disagreed, knew he had to be careful. He had learned that any rash action could endanger his family. However, that did not mean he would sit idly by. He quietly began his own investigation, sending people to follow any traces related to Ian. The mysterious disappearance. Meanwhile, another crisis was happening. Mariah Copeland returned home in the afternoon and immediately felt that something was wrong. The house was completely quiet, there was no sound of baby Arya laughing or any sign of Tessa. Mariah frantically called Tessa's name, but no one answered. Tessa's phone was also disconnected, which made Mariah panic even more. She began to search everywhere in the house, but found nothing. Little signs began to make her suspicious. Tessa's car was still in the garage, but her bag and coat were nowhere to be found. This indicated that Tessa had left, but why without warning? What happened to her and Arya? In a panic, Mariah called Nick Newman for help. When Nick picked up, her voice was urgent. "Nick, Tessa, and Arya are gone. I can't find them anywhere. Tessa isn't answering the phone. I'm afraid something's happened." Nick felt uneasy. Tessa was a very careful person, especially when it came to taking care of Arya. Her sudden disappearance didn't make sense. Nick and Mariah investigated Tessa's disappearance together. They visited familiar places Tessa frequented, asked friends and neighbors, but no one knew anything. However, a close friend of Tessa's revealed a detail that sent a chill down their spines. A few days ago, Tessa had mentioned receiving a strange call. She looked very worried and didn't seem to want to go into details. Nick and Mariah investigate Tessa's disappearance together. They visit familiar places that Tessa frequents, ask friends and neighbors, but no one knows anything. However, a close friend of Tessa's reveals a detail that sends a chill down both of their spines. Tessa mentioned receiving a strange call a few days ago. She looked very worried and seemed reluctant to elaborate. Mariah begins to recall Tessa's unusual behavior over the past week. She constantly checks her phone, sometimes looking absent-minded as if she's thinking about something. These small details now add up to a terrifying picture. Could Tessa's disappearance be related to Ian Ward? Victor gets involved while Mariah and Nick search. Victor decides it's time for him to take action. Over Victoria's objections, Victor contacts his own sources and quickly discovers that Ian Ward has recently appeared in a small town near Genoa City. This only strengthens Victor's suspicions. Ian may be planning revenge against the Newmans, and Tessa may have become his target. Victoria, unwilling to believe that her father is right, cannot ignore the mounting evidence. She reluctantly agrees to let Victor lead the investigation to find Ian and settle the matter once and for all. The storm is coming. These events throw the Newman family into a new spiral of chaos. While Victor devotes all his energy to finding Ian Ward, Mariah has not given up hope of finding Tessa and Aria. She feels that time is against her, and if she does not act quickly, things could spiral out of control. Ian Ward is not simply Jordan's accomplice, he is a ghost from the Newman family's past, someone who has always sought to destroy the family. This time, he wants more than just revenge, he wants to completely destroy what Victor holds most dear. A shadow has fallen over the Newman family's main farmhouse. The rifts in the family relationship have reached an irreparable level, but this time, they must unite to face a real threat, Ian Ward. The man who once brought pain and fear to all he touched is back, more dangerous than ever. With Tessa and Aria's mysterious disappearances, Mariah quickly comes to the conclusion that Ian is behind it. This is not only her intuition, but also Ian's recent threats, a cruel reminder that if she does not comply with his wishes, the price will be painful. Mariah has never forgiven Ian for what he did in the past, and her anger is now burning brighter than ever. But is this hatred something Ian wants to exploit? Ian Ward is more than just a manipulator, he is a strategist who always looks for ways to attack his opponent's weakest points. He knows that the Newman family is already divided, and he wants to exploit that rift to eliminate each member. In his final conversation with Jordan, Ian coldly declares, if Mariah doesn't cooperate, she will pay the price. And not just her, everyone she loves will fall. Those words are not just empty threats, they are declarations of war. When Mariah says she will never let Ian back into her life, she has no idea that it has provoked her most dangerous enemy. And now Ian is not only targeting Mariah, but the entire Newman family. The confrontation at the farmhouse. Nick Newman, along with his father Victor and Michael Baldwin, are at the main farmhouse when things take a turn for the nightmarish. Ian Ward appears, weapon in hand and a look of madness on his face. He was wearing a sweater, and the blood on the fabric was a sign that he had just survived some kind of deadly encounter. Ian was no joke. He walked in, his footsteps heavy on the old wooden floor. His hand was tight on the gun, his eyes darting frantically from person to person in the room. Victor, as usual, showed no fear. He stood up, faced Ian, and tried to calm the situation. But Ian was not one to be swayed by words. "Get Nicky here, now!" Ian shouted, his voice cracking with anger. "Or I will turn this place into rubble along with all of you." Nick took a step forward, trying to draw Ian's attention away from Victor. "Ian, stop. You don't have to do this. We can settle this peacefully." Ian laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Peace? You think I came here for peace? I have been ruined by you, and now it is time for me to take back what is mine." Tensions reached a boiling point when Nikki Newman arrived at the scene after receiving an emergency call from Victor. As she entered, she saw a horrifying scene. Ian was holding a gun to Victor, while Nick and Michael stood a short distance away, trying to figure out how to approach him without provoking him. "Ian, stop. You don't have to do this," Nikki shouted, her eyes filled with concern. But her words only made Ian angrier. "Shut up, Nikki. You don't understand. You took my life, you took everything I have. Now I'm going to pay it all back, in blood." A fierce struggle broke out as Nick tried to wrestle the gun from Ian. Screams, footsteps, and gunshots rang out, shaking the house. In the chaos, Ian spun around and pointed the gun at Victor. But before he could pull the trigger, Nick jumped in to stop him. The gun went off again. No one knew who the bullet had hit until everything seemed to slow down. When the smoke cleared, Ian collapsed to the floor, his sweater soaked in blood. But what was more terrifying was that Victor was also down, his hand clutching his shoulder, where blood was pouring out. Ian Ward was subdued, but the price had been too great. Victor was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and the Newman family was thrown into chaos. Nicky sobbed, and Nick could not hide his guilt for not being able to protect his father. The police arrived quickly on the scene and arrested Ian. But even in handcuffs, Ian smiled, the smile of someone who had left an indelible mark on the minds of those around him. "I may have lost, but I made you pay," he said before being taken away. Meanwhile, Mariah couldn't help but worry about Tessa and Arya. Could Ian have other accomplices out there? Are they holding Tessa and Arya hostage? These questions weigh heavily on her mind, and she knows that this battle is not really over. The Newman family's future, the battle at the farmhouse, has left irreparable scars on the Newman family. Victor is fighting for his life, and his family is forced to confront the damage Ian left behind. But the story is not over. Even though Ian has been captured, the words he said before he was taken away still echo in Nicky's head: "This is only the beginning." The bloody battle may be over, but the ghost of Ian Ward will haunt the Newman family for days to come. The biggest question now is, what will they do to stop the next storm? Victor sits in the living room with Nick and Michael Baldwin, discussing a plan to deal with Ian Ward, who is spreading fear everywhere. The lights in the house flicker, reflecting the worried and tense faces. "We can't wait any longer," Victor declared, his voice firm. "Ian Ward is a monster. He's made our family miserable, and now he's back to destroy it all." Nick sat beside him, his eyes flashing with anger. "I won't let him touch anyone in this family again, Dad. If he dares to come back, we'll end this once and for all." As Nick finished speaking, the large window in the living room suddenly shattered. Wind and rain rushed in, blowing the curtains and extinguishing the lights. In the darkness, a figure appeared, Ian Ward, gun in hand, eyes wild and murderous. Michael stepped forward, trying to stay calm. "Ian, think again. No one here wants this to end. Put down the gun, and we can talk." Ian smirked, a dry laugh that chilled the room. "Talk? You think I'm here to negotiate? I'm here to get justice." He pointed his gun at Victor, causing both Nick and Michael to immediately stand in front of him. "He's the first," Ian growled, "because he's the source of all my pain." Nicky and Mariah appeared as the situation became more tense. Nicky, Newman and Mariah suddenly entered the house, unaware that Ian was there. Nicky stepped through the door and was immediately stunned to see Ian, his gun pointed at her husband. Nicky was calm, but her hands were shaking. "Ian, listen to me. You don't have to do this. Let this stop. No one needs to die tonight." Ian narrowed his eyes, his voice becoming lower, more dangerous. "No one needs to die? What about Mariah? She refused to cooperate with me, and now she will be held accountable. But first, Nicky, you will watch your family fall one by one." In the chaos, Mariah screamed, "Ian! If you want me, I'm here. But let them go." Ian spun around, his eyes flashing with madness. "Mariah, do you think I want to spare you? You ruined everything. You and Tessa will pay." Mariah trembled, but she did not back down. "You can't destroy me anymore, Ian. I survived what you did, and I won't let you hurt anyone else." Ian stepped forward, holding a gun to Mariah. But before he could pull the trigger, another shot rang out. Nicky had grabbed Victor's gun and shot Ian. He staggered, falling to the floor with a look of shock. Blood was smeared across his sweater. The end or a new beginning? Ian lay on the floor, dying, but still smiling. "You think this is the end? I'm not the only one. What you've done will never be forgotten." He tried to say something more, but his breathing became weaker, and finally, he collapsed. The room fell silent, except for everyone's heavy breathing and the sound of rain falling outside the window. Nicky dropped the gun, her hands shaking. Nick struggled to stand up, hugging his mother. Victor looked at Ian's body, his eyes expressionless, but he knew in his heart, this was not the end. Mariah, standing silently in the corner of the room, felt an indescribable emptiness. Even though Ian was dead, his last words made her worried. He said he wasn't the only one. What does that mean? Who else is out there? Victor stepped forward, placing his hand on her shoulder. We will find out. But from now on, our family will never be weak to anyone again. Outside, the storm has stopped, but darkness still hangs over Genoa City. Is this really the end of Ian Ward, or will his ghost continue to haunt the Newman family?